Good afternoon. Welcome. My name is Tricia Denton. I'm the president of the League of Women Voters of Leelanau County. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization that encourages informed and active participation in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. We never ever support or oppose candidates or parties. Membership is open to women and men 16 years of age or older who subscribe to the purposes and policy of the League. A third of our members are men. More information may be found at lwvleelanau.org. Annual dues for students are $5, $60 a year for non-student individuals, or $90 for a household membership. Dues assistance is available. Don't let that be a barrier to keeping you from participating. Membership applications can be found online, or see one of our board members, one of our folks that has the fancy name tag on. They can give you more information on membership too. Just a couple of quick announcements before we get started. There is a local election happening next Tuesday, May 7th. For those of you in the Leland Township or the Leland School District, there is a millage election. Please remember to vote or pick up your absentee ballot if you're not going to be in town. I just did that for the first time under the new Michigan voter law this morning up in the clerk's office because I'll be out of town next Tuesday and I'm not going to miss my right to vote. Also, our annual member meeting is being held May 22nd. We have extensive details available on our website and some more information out on the membership table in the hall. Please sign up, plan to attend. We have a nationally ranked speaker coming, Elaine Weiss, the author of The Women's Hour, our book read for this year. I have a copy of the book up here on the table. So we hope to see you all there, and you're welcome to bring guests. And then my last note before I turn the microphone over to Marian Krumkowski will be that our June forum is going to be a special forum on called Talking Trash. And we're going to have this room available from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. We've invited folks from our community who can help us better understand what happens with the things that we use when we're done with them. We have two speakers who are going to give the main forum program at noon, but come early, check out the booths, talk to a lot of individuals. We'll have people on composting, recycling, repurposing, reducing, reusing, all those kinds of things that we do to minimize our impact with the things that we use. And you all can find a little flyer for that on the tables as well. So that being said, again, welcome to all of you. Thank you for coming to today's forum. And I'm going to turn it over to Miriam Krumkowski, a League board member who coordinated today's program.
Thank you, Tricia. Once again, welcome to all of you here. Today we're going to discuss the Raise the Age campaign, and that is a campaign that is geared towards raising the age of juvenile court jurisdiction from 17 years of age to 18 years of age. I already passed out on that side of the room, but I have the League of Women Voters, Michigan, our state position, supports increasing the age, and it has endorsed these legislative efforts to raise the age for juvenile court. And just a short quote from our position statement says, the children and youth position statement says, "Children sometimes commit status or adult offenses, but the justice system must recognize that they are still children." Today we have two presenters who will address this issue. Our first is Jason Smith, and Jason talk to you for a couple minutes and talk almost equally as long about Joe Polo. Jason is a licensed master social worker. He's the director of the Youth Justice Policy at the Michigan Council of Crime and Delinquency. Jason has led legislative advocacy efforts and serves as the coordinator of this campaign. So a lot of credit goes to Jason and many others to getting as far as we have gotten with regard to these legislative efforts in this session of the House and Senate. Additionally, Jason manages several other MCCD projects that aim to reduce the use of out-of-home placement through statewide expansion of effective community-based programming for justice-involved youth. Jason has a long history of working in the juvenile justice field. He has worked as a direct care provider at a transitional home for girls, then as a case manager with Wayne County's juvenile justice system, and while working on his Master of Social Work degree at the University of Michigan, he interned at the Washtenaw County Prisoner Reentry Initiative. He also has co-managed a youth diversion program in Skokie, Illinois, and was the 2011 Youth Justice Leadership Institute Fellow with the National Juvenile Justice Network. He is also, if we need more, he is also the author of Restoring Kids, Transforming Communities, a report that details the use of juvenile court diversion programs in Michigan. It's quite a list of accomplishments in the area of juvenile justice. We also, our second speaker is Joseph Povolo, and he's our local star working on this work, and he will address the local impact of the change in legislation. Joe has been the Leelanau County Family Court Coordinator. Now, you told me 5 years. I think it's longer than 5 years.
Since 2014.
Okay, well, there you go. But he's been with the court for many years. In that role, he wears a number of different hats, obviously the court administrator, but he is also our volunteer coordinator, securing local individuals to assist with youth, whether it be providing transportation, tutoring, mentoring, sometimes sitting with a child who is in detention or helping out with a group outing. If any of you are interested in volunteering for probate family court here, see Joe afterwards or talk to me. I'm also the juvenile court judge here in this county. So I wear a couple different hats too. He also oversees our CASA program, which stands for Court Appointed Special Advocate. And those are individuals who work one-on-one with youth and often can make a life-changing difference in a child's life. Joe has a Bachelor of Arts degree from the University of St. Thomas in St. Paul, and also a Master's of Science in Administration from CMU. He has worked at the St. Mary's Home for Boys in Oregon, and Villa Maria, a residential treatment program for girls in Grand Rapids. He has probate court or family court administrator since 2014. 14? Yeah. But he has been our juvenile probation officer for 25 years. He has served on the board and was board president of the Leelanau Children's Center, and he has or continues to serve on a number of initiatives in our area. The Poverty Reduction Initiative, Systems of Care, Family Preservation, Early Childhood Development Commission, and the Leelanau County Family Coordinating Council. He is also the author of numerous successful grant proposals that keep Leelanau County on the right track with prevention and rehabilitative services for our youth. And he's also a 7-handicap golfer. And he was so patient with me today when I finally had the courage to ask him, well, what does that mean? So he explained it to me, so now I understand. So Jason, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Marianne, and thank you to everyone for participating, inviting me up. It's a beautiful day despite the rain. It's still a pretty trip. I'm staying in Traverse City, and the drive up here was just as lovely as if it was a sunny day. And I also wanted to shout out that Joe and the juvenile court in Leelanau County, you do amazing work. I work with Joe on other programs as well for community-based kids, and you're doing great work with the kids here who come in contact with your court. So kudos to you. So I work for the Michigan Council on Crime and Delinquency. MCCD is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization that works on statewide policy reform, both juvenile justice and criminal justice reform issues. And the reason that we have been working for so many years now on raising the age of juvenile jurisdiction is we feel like it's our way of being able to contribute to the reduction of mass incarceration. If you prevent young people from entering the adult system at an early age, It will reduce the number of future crimes, future crime victims, and future adults languishing in prisons for lengthy prison sentences. This campaign is not about not holding young people accountable for their actions. We feel like accountability and being responsible for your behavior is a key component of positive youth development. The whole goal of raising the age of juvenile jurisdiction is to treat young people with age and developmentally appropriate services. Okay? So, quick overview of the issue. Michigan is one of only 4 states left in the entire country that automatically prosecutes 17-year-olds as adults, no matter what the offense is. It can be as serious as murder or as low level as stealing a candy bar, retail fraud. There is no option to treat a 17-year-old once they're charged with an offense in the juvenile justice system. And that flies in conflict with every other law that governs our state and what's considered a child or an adult. There's just a list of them right there. A key example up there is serving on a jury. A 17-year-old can never be charged by a jury of their peers because you have to be 18 to serve on a jury. And if you're curious about the other states left in the country, that's Wisconsin, Georgia, and Texas are the other 3 along with us that still automatically prosecute 17-year-olds as adults. All 3 of those also have active legislation this year to change their laws. We started working on this issue way back in the winter of 2014, and back there were 11 states that treated 17-year-olds as adults, including a handful, New York and North Carolina being 2 examples, that treated 16-year-olds as adults. Since that point, 7 states have raised their age, including North Carolina and New York, so there's no state in the country now that automatically treats 16-year-olds as adults. But we're one of the last few that still automatically treats 14-year-olds, or 17-year-olds as adults. Too many numbers. Okay. So, young people are not adults. One of the things that has really helped drive this change in the justice system nationwide and how we treat older youth and incorporating them into the juvenile justice system is the recent uptick in acknowledgement that adolescent brains are different than adult brains. Adolescent brain science has shown that the adolescent brain is continuing to develop all the way up into the mid-20s, 25, and one of the last portions of the brain to develop is the portion that regulates impulsive behavior. So young people are more likely to act out more irrationally, especially in emotionally charged situations, especially when influenced by their peers. That's why you often see when a young person commits a crime, it's often in a group of kids because they're pushed by peer influence. They often struggle with risk versus reward, determining if this action is worth the consequences of doing it. Again, not about not knowing better, it's about resisting the urge to participate in delinquent behavior. The good thing about this, about the continuing to develop brain, is that young people are amenable to rehabilitative treatment and programming that the juvenile justice system offers. They're not only that, what was I going to say about that? They're amenable to treatment. They're open to positive peer influence. It's something that in the adolescent brain development actually helped the federal government and the U.S. Supreme Court with the recent decisions around cases with juveniles in the adult system and help set the age on the federal level that 18-year-olds, anyone under the age of 18-year-olds should be treated like a child, considered to be a young person, not an adult, and treated differently in the eyes of the law. Okay? So the federal government treats anyone under the age of 18 as a young person, as a youth. There's federal standards called the Prison Rape Elimination Act. All states receive federal funding from the Department of Justice for prison services and treatment. To receive that federal funding, you have to comply with the Prison Rape Elimination Act, or PREA. There are several requirements included in that, but for this purpose, or raise the age, we really focus on that standard, that young people under the age of 18 must be sight and sound separated from adults. and it restricts the use of isolation and solitary confinement. If you don't comply with that requirement, then a portion of your money that you receive from the federal funds has to be used to help your state rectify that issue, expand your facility, whatever, to comply with that sight and sound separation. So, state prisons are audited. We are compliant. All of the young people under the age of 18 that are placed in adult facilities, in adult prisons, once they're convicted and sentenced to a prison sentence, are in 2 facilities, statewide for the most part. One is the Thumb Correctional Facility, which is in the Lapeer area. Those are where all the boys are. It is a multi-age facility, so there are adults there too, but the young people are housed in their own unit, separated from the older inmates. And then the young women under the age of 18 are in the only prison for women in the state, Huron Valley Correctional Facility, which is close to Ann Arbor. And they're sight and sound separated. Now, the jails in Michigan, though they are supposed to comply with PREA, required to comply with PREA, they're not audited in the same way that the state prisons are. As long as your state prisons are compliant, your state is. So, while the state separates young people from adults in the prisons, there are many county jails, particularly smaller rural communities, have acknowledged themselves that they cannot sight and sound separate young people in their facilities, and they house them with the adults. And that places them at risk for expensive lawsuits. That's the main way that county jails are often dinged. There was an example in North Carolina of this, of a young person being sexually assaulted in the county jail because they weren't sight and sound separated from the adults, they weren't compliant with PREA. The young person, as the litigant, could argue that the jail wasn't looking out for their well-being, their safety and well-being, by complying with the Prison Rape Elimination Act. So I've heard sheriffs, and these are county sheriffs admitting that, and because they want to do something about it, it's not just that they're proud of the fact, but one county sheriff at an event that I spoke at said that the only way that he could comply with PREA, sight and sound separation, is by putting the 17-year-olds in solitary confinement. And he said that they were there for an average of 23 days. And these are, not found guilty yet, still going through the court process. And there's clear research that shows the traumatic experience that one can go through in solitary confinement. So, and it's only because they're 17. I've heard other examples of 2 kids, 16 and 17-year-old, it wasn't one example, where two siblings who got into a fight with mom. They took the kids to a local lockup, and they had a youth serving area for kids 16 and below, so little brother got to go there. And then the 17-year-old they put in the drunk tank, because they had no place to put that 17-year-old that was different from the juveniles, but then also separate from the adults. And so it's a gray area right now, unfortunately, that 17-year-olds are in our state. So additional consequences of treating 17-year-olds as adults is adult convictions create long-term barriers for housing, employment, continuing your education. That is an issue whether you're a child or an adult in the adult system, but I think that the key difference, and something that we've heard time in and time out from kids, or well, now adults, who were convicted as adults when they were 17 or even below, is when they come out of prison, which most do. The average prison sentence for a 17-year-old is 9 years, so eventually they do come out. Prisoner reentry looks very different for someone who entered the adult system as a child, never had an opportunity to work, sign a contract, or rent an apartment, so on. Have those adult life skills to be able to survive on their own. You can't expect them to succeed or thrive receiving the same type of programming and services on their own that someone who entered the adult system in their 20s and 30s could. I mean, it's a struggle for them too, but for a young person, it's extremely hard. If the last time you saw the outside was when you were under the age of 18. And you hear that each year of prison is close to $34,000, or you've often heard that it's more expensive to send a kid to prison than 1 year of college these days. I don't know about that now, but that was the ongoing saying. the juvenile justice system, our use of out-of-home placement, and when kids are adjudicated as juveniles in the juvenile court, could be more expensive on an annual basis than that. There are some juvenile facilities, and it's because there's more requirements with treatment and education and programming that you offer to kids in facilities than you do for adults. Can be more expensive, but the sentence is much longer. Often a young person in a juvenile facility isn't there much longer than a year, maybe a year and a half or two in extreme cases. But again, you're talking about 2 years to 9 years. It evens out, or it's even more expensive when they're in the adult system. And not only that, they're losing all that time that they're in the adult system that they could be earning wages, that they could be contributing tax revenue to the state and the local communities. And that's key because all those other states we showed on that map, the other 46 states, their kids aren't experiencing this. So a kid in Illinois, a kid in Indiana, Ohio, where the juvenile age is 17, may commit the same crime that a kid here in Michigan does, the same offense, but it doesn't follow them for the rest of their life, like a kid in Michigan has to deal with. So a kid in Michigan who commits that crime, same crime, would have more barriers getting into the University of Michigan, getting a job here in Michigan, a high-paying job, than some kid who comes from Illinois who may have had the same background and was able to move beyond it. That's the importance of this, just aligning ourselves with the rest of the country so that we're not at a competitive disadvantage with our youth workforce. Putting young people in adult facilities endangers their lives. I've heard countless stories in doing these public education events and having people come and testify in Lansing on this issue of young people being harmed, sexually assaulted in prisons. I heard a story of a woman who, she was 17, that went to jail. The first night she was in jail, she was raped. Another child, or actually this was a legislator who told this story. She had a nephew who got into a car, he was 17, got into a car with another young man, didn't know that it was stolen. They both got arrested. They went to jail. Her nephew, 17, was raped within the same night or the next day and then hung himself. It's a dangerous situation because they're considered a vulnerable population in a facility with adults, both by its staff and by the older inmates. And it's not effective. If the goal is to increase public safety by prosecuting 17-year-olds or younger people as adults, research shows that it actually makes the situation worse, possibly because of all the things that I just outlined. But when there was a study by the Center for Disease Control that showed that young people leaving adult facilities are more, compared to young people with comparable offenses that went to juvenile facilities, are more likely to commit serious offenses, violent offenses sooner when they leave an adult facility. And I just mentioned that, but this is just a graphic outlining what I said about suicide. But one of the consequences of housing young people in adult facilities are that they're more likely to harm themselves, possibly fatally, by being housed in those facilities. Racial disparities exist throughout the justice system, from the earliest points, the point of arrest, all the way to the end point of incarceration. Michigan, even though youth of color only make up less than a quarter of the statewide population, they make up more than half of the young people entering the MDOC jurisdiction. And when we say MDOC jurisdiction, Michigan Department of Corrections, that's counting kids that are on probation, adult probation, which still, they're not getting age-appropriate services, even on probation, prison and parole. So raising the age would dramatically reduce the number of youth of color entering the adult system. So we think that right now is the perfect time to raise the age because our youth population overall is declining in Michigan, but particularly in the justice system. This graph shows the decline of arrests from 2007 to 2016. Youth arrests, which around the state, that's a tricky data point because people define arrest differently, but just looking at the trend, Youth arrests have declined by 58% overall, and that's including 17-year-olds. In 2007, I believe it was closer to like 12 or 13,000 17-year-olds were arrested, and in 2016, it was closer to 6,000. And so we're at a place, there's capacity to be able to serve 17-year-olds in the juvenile justice system because our caseloads, our arrests have declined overall. This slide is an example of juvenile case filing, so these are the petitions served to the court. Keep in mind that one kid could have multiple charges, multiple petitions, so this isn't one kid per case. But you can still see, again, the number of cases declining over time. And then we had a slide, but Joe printed it out for us, thankfully. It's hard to see, but Leelanau County, he got some data for cases in juveniles in Leelanau County, and you can see that both petitions and actual juvenile cases have been declining as well over time.
That's over a 20-year period of time.
Okay.
Can you tell us the number?
At about 1999, it was about 120 number of petitions, and in 2018, we're down to about somewhere between around 45.
Yep. All right. So this one's kind of a blurry graphic. This graph on the right here, or my right, is the funding for Connecticut after they raised the age. Now, they were one of those states that jumped up 2 ages, from 16 to 18. There was a concern that it would cost over $100 million to be able to serve juveniles in the justice system that were typically prosecuted in the adult system. But in actuality, all they did in Connecticut, and the sky hasn't fallen, they're continuing to serve kids, and their caseloads, just like here in Michigan, nationwide, arrests and juvenile caseloads are continuing to decline even after these changes are made. They only actually ended up reinvesting $39 million from their state budget to support serving more kids in their juvenile system. They were able to do that. And then the same thing for Massachusetts. The actual implementation was 37% lower than what they expected it to, what they were putting in their fiscal estimates. One of our partners on the Raise the Age campaign is the Michigan Catholic Conference. They're a strong partner, and they paid for a statewide poll with Michigan voters to get a sense of the support for Raise the Age statewide. And what it showed was that overwhelmingly, Michigan, I think it was like 68% or so, said that they did not support the current law as it is. They do not support automatically prosecuting 17-year-olds as adults. When you provided the voters with more information, like that 17-year-olds would have better protections on their records, that they would receive age and developmentally appropriate treatment, that number jumped up close to 90% support for Raise the Age. And we have, and that's across the political spectrum in multiple regions, race, gender, everything. And we were able to get that information to legislators. It really made a difference last year during the election to sell them on this point, that you're doing something that your residents, your voters, your constituents want you to do. Okay. So here's the legislation to try to address this issue. So this is the third legislative session in a row that we have worked to try to pass Raise the Age legislation. This is from earlier this year. This was a press conference that the senators held. I think this is your senator right here, Kurt Vanderwall, to support the Raise the Age legislation. This was all the bill sponsors of their bill.